Hello, and welcome to another compelling episode of the Global Intelligence Weekly Wrap-Up, covering the week ending August 30th, 2024. Today, you're in for an exclusive journey into the real world of intelligence and national security. Your host, Neil Bisson, a retired intelligence officer with over 25 years of law enforcement, domestic and international intelligence experience, is here to share his unparalleled insights and analysis. With a career rooted in the Canadian Security Intelligence Service, and now as the director of the Global Intelligence Knowledge Network, Neil brings you the kind of expert perspective that few can offer. This week's episode is packed with the most pressing and fascinating stories in global terrorism, high-stakes espionage, and the ever-evolving landscape of national security. You're not just getting the news, you're gaining access to the deep, nuanced understanding that comes only from decades of on-the-ground experience. And trust me, you'll want to stay tuned until the very end to catch every bit of valuable insight. Before we delve into today's stories, I want to extend a heartfelt thank you for your continued support. By subscribing to the Global Intelligence Weekly Wrap-Up on Spotify, YouTube, Apple Podcasts, or simply asking your smart speaker to play it, you're ensuring you stay connected with the most critical intelligence update. If you value the insights you're getting, please leave a comment, give us a rating, and share the podcast. Remember, by listening to the podcast, you're now part of the network. Your feedback drives us to keep delivering the in-depth, high-quality content that you rely on. And if you're looking to take your support to the next level, consider becoming a supporter at buzzsprout.com/2336717/support or buymeacoffee.com/BIKN. Every contribution empowers us to continue providing the vital intelligence analysis that keeps you informed and ahead of the curve. Now, without further ado, let's dive into this week's episode of the Global Intelligence Weekly Wrap-Up. We're thrilled to have you with us, and remember, stick around to the end to get all the insights you won't want to miss.
Hello, and welcome back to Global Intelligence Weekly Wrap-Up. In our first story, we're discussing a recent and highly concerning development reported in the article, "Activists Who Took Over Khalistan Campaign from Hardeep Singh Nijjar Warned Life at Risk." This story brings to light the escalating threats faced by pro-Khalistan activists, particularly Inderjeet Singh Gosal, who has taken over the campaign after the assassination of a Sikh temple leader, Hardeep Singh Nijjar. Inderjeet Singh Gosal, a prominent figure in the Khalistan independence movement, has been warned by Ontario Provincial Police that his life is in danger. This warning, delivered as part of a duty to warn notice, underscores the serious risks faced by individuals involved in this contentious separatist campaign. From an intelligence perspective, the situation is emblematic of the increasing reach of transnational repression. The Indian government, under Prime Minister Narendra Modi, has been accused of employing assassination plots and other forms of intimidation to silence dissidents abroad. This isn't an isolated incident. It forms part of a broader pattern of foreign interference and covert operations targeting political opponents of the Indian state. The article highlights the involvement of organized crime allegedly contracted by Indian agents to carry out these assassinations. This tactic not only poses a direct threat to individuals like Gosal, but also challenges the sovereignty of nations like Canada, where such activities occur. The Khalistan movement seeks to establish an independent state for Sikhs in India's Punjab region. The movement has been a point of tension between Indian government and Sikhs in the diaspora, particularly in countries like Canada and the United States. The assassination of Hardeep Singh Nijjar in 2023 and the subsequent warnings to Gosal are part of a larger trend of foreign powers using illicit means to suppress political movements abroad. We've seen similar tactics employed by others, but India's actions, as outlined in this report, are particularly alarming due to the direct implications for Canadian national security. Comparing this to other events, such as Russian attempts to eliminate dissidents abroad, we see a troubling trend where states feel emboldened to act beyond their borders with little regard for international law. The article cites Gurpatwan Singh Panun, a key figure in the Khalistan movement, who directly blames the Modi government for orchestrating these threats. Panun's comments reflect a growing concern that India's actions are not just a form of repression, but also an affront to Canadian sovereignty. This situation is a clear example of how foreign interference can manifest in deadly ways, far beyond mere election meddling. The involvement of organized crime as a proxy for state action complicates the intelligence community's efforts to counter these threats, as it blurs the lines between criminal and state actors. The threats facing Inderjeet Singh Gosal highlight the ongoing and dangerous reach of transnational repression by states such as India. As Canada continues to grapple with foreign interference, this case serves as a reminder of the need for vigilance and robust intelligence operations to protect those targeted by these covert actions. For more insights on the assassination of Hardeep Singh Nijjar and the implication of Canada's national security, head over to the Global Intelligence Knowledge Network website, where you can read articles entitled Killer Spies, The Dark Side of Intelligence, and How OPSEC May Have Exposed Indian Agents in Canada's Murder Case. In our next story, we head to South Korea, where we focus our attention on an unfolding espionage situation that could have significant implications. We'll be discussing the article titled Military Prosecutors Indict Intel Office Official Over Leaking Black Agent Info, which uncovers a major breach within South Korea's military intelligence community. A military intelligence official from South Korea's Defense Intelligence Command has been indicted on serious espionage charges. This individual is accused of leaking sensitive information about black agents, those undercover operatives who are out there doing the critical and often dangerous work of gathering intelligence on North Korea. The leaked information apparently ended up with a Chinese national of Korean descent, who may have ties to North Korea's intelligence agency. The official faces charges of aiding the enemy, bribery, and violating the Military Secrets Protection Act. But notably, espionage charges weren't pursued, likely because there is no concrete evidence directly linking the leak to North Korea. From an intelligence standpoint, this leak is a major breach of security. Exposing the identity of black agents does more than just disrupt operations. It puts these operatives' lives in peril. This is all happening at a time when tensions with North Korea are as high as ever. This is the last thing South Korea's intelligence community needs. To understand the full impact, it's important to consider the role of these black agents. They're on the front lines, operating undercover in highly sensitive environments. They're gathering information that's crucial to South Korea's national security. Their identities are kept under wraps for obvious reasons. Once exposed, their lives and the success of their missions are at serious risk. A leak like this just isn't a technical breach. It's a very personal one for the operatives involved. These are people whose work requires them to live in the shadows. And when their cover is blown, it's not just a mission at risk. It's the lives of their families and their close friends. The fact that this information may have ended up in the hands of someone with possible links to North Korea is a huge red flag. Even without espionage charges, the potential implications are serious, and it's a situation that South Korea and its allies will need to monitor closely. This incident serves as a reminder of the delicate nature of intelligence work and the constant vigilance required to protect those on the front lines. The leak of black agents' identities in South Korea is a troubling development, and it underscores the importance of strong internal security measures within global intelligence agencies. Going forward, it will be crucial for South Korea and its allies to take steps to prevent such breaches and ensure that their operatives can continue to do their work without fear of being exposed. For our next story, we're diving into a major development that could have far-reaching implications across the globe. The arrest by French authorities of Pavel Durov, the CEO and founder of the messaging app Telegram. On Saturday, French authorities arrested Pavel Durov, sparking a controversy that touches on a critical issue like online speech, encryption, and digital rights. Durov is currently being detained, questioned, and may face charges that range from possession of child pornography to money laundering and association with organized crime. This arrest isn't just a legal matter, it's stirring the pot in diplomatic circles, especially in Europe, where the balance between free speech and security is a hot topic. Telegram, as you might know, has always taken a hands-off approach to content moderation compared to its peers. With nearly 1 billion users globally, it's become a go-to platform for everyone from political dissidents to those engaging in less than savory activities. Telegram's statement following Durov's arrest was defiant, insisting that its moderation policies are industry standard and that Durov has nothing to hide. But here's where things get more interesting. Durov, who has long positioned himself as a defender of free speech, now finds himself at the center of a legal and political storm. The charges being investigated against him could lead to serious consequences, not just for him, but for the entire digital landscape, especially concerning encrypted communications. Now let's take a step back to understand the broader context. Pavel Durov founded Telegram in 2013 in Russia and has since moved to Dubai, distancing himself from the Russian government, which tried to ban the app in 2018. Despite its history, Russia now relies heavily on Telegram for military communications and propaganda, especially in the ongoing conflict in Ukraine. Durov's arrest has surprisingly led to outrage from Russian officials, who are framing this as an attack on freedom of communication. This situation is more than just a legal drama. It's a clash of ideologies. Europe has been wrestling with how to regulate social media platforms like Facebook and X, and now Telegram is at the heart of that struggle. The arrest could set a precedent for how governments handle encryption and content moderation moving forward. Graham Bookey from the Atlantic Council notes that Telegram straddles the line between a messaging service and social media platform, with a deliberate light touch on content moderation. This has made it a haven for various bad actors, including terrorist groups like ISIS. But arresting Durov for content sharing on Telegram raises questions about responsibility and the limits of executive accountability. Mallory Nodell, a cryptography researcher, warns that his arrest could lead to misconceptions about encryption, potentially harming activists who rely on secure messaging to protect their safety. She points out that alleged crimes are not necessarily linked to encryption itself, and targeting Durov might set a dangerous precedent. Durov's arrest is more than just a headline. It's a flashpoint in the ongoing debate over digital rights, security, and the power of governments to regulate online spaces. As we watch this case unfold, it's clear that the implications could be significant, not just for Telegram, but for the future of encrypted communication and digital freedom worldwide. We now move on to Germany, where we turn our focus to a tragic event in Solingen, Germany, where a festival turned into a scene of horror. Over the weekend, a 26-year-old man from Syria, identified as Isa al-H, carried out a brutal knife attack that claimed the lives of 3 people and left 8 others wounded. Authorities believe that this is not just an isolated act of violence, but one connected to the Islamic State. According to German prosecutors, the suspect has allegedly joined ISIS, embracing their extremist ideology. The attack itself was brutal, with the assailant deliberately targeting the victims' necks to cause maximum harm. This deliberate, calculated violence speaks volumes about the threat posed by radicalized individuals within our communities. After the attack, the suspect, still wearing blood-stained clothes, surrendered to the police. He walked up to a patrol car near the scene and turned himself in. The investigation is ongoing, with the federal prosecutor's office considering charges of murder and attempted murder, but nothing official has been filed yet. ISIS, known for its propaganda machine, quickly claimed responsibility for the attack, lauding the assailant as a soldier of the Islamic State. This claim, while not unexpected, highlights the ongoing influence of ISIS and similar groups as they face significant pressure worldwide. As the investigation continues, the community in Solingen is left to grapple with the aftermath. Mourners have gathered at a nearby church, lighting candles and leaving flowers as they process this senseless act of violence. This incident raises important questions about the ongoing threat of terrorism in Europe and the challenges of integrating refugee populations within safeguarding national security. The suspect had been living in a refugee residence just a short distance from the attack site, a detail that adds another layer of complexity to the story. In a world where extremist ideologies can turn a community event into a scene of horror, it's crucial that we remain vigilant and address the root causes of radicalization. The concern over ISIS-inspired attacks is a global one. For our next story, we return to Canada, where we're discussing a story that's raising serious concerns about Canada's security screening processes. The article we're focused on is titled, "Terror Suspect Came to Canada 3 years After Allegedly Appearing in ISIS Video." This case involves a Toronto man, Ahmed Fouad Mustafa El-Didi, who reportedly appeared in an ISIS video before coming to Canada. The timeline presented in this case is deeply troubling. Ahmed El-Didi arrived in Canada in February 2018, 3 years after he allegedly appeared in an ISIS video from 2015, which he was shown dismembering a prisoner. Upon arrival, he made a refugee claim that was accepted in 2019, and in 2024 he became a Canadian citizen after passing a security screening conducted by the Canadian Security Intelligence Service. However, just a month later, CSIS identified El-Didi as a potential security threat, leading to an investigation by both CSIS and the RCMP. El-Didi and his son were arrested on July 28th for allegedly plotting an ISIS attack in Toronto. This case highlights potential flaws in Canada's security screening process, where an individual with alleged ties to ISIS could not only enter the country, but also become a citizen. The fact that al-Didi was granted citizenship just weeks before being arrested for plotting a terror attack is a clear indication that the current screening mechanisms failed to detect a significant threat. To understand the full scope of this issue, we must consider the broader context of immigration and security screening in Canada. The system is designed to balance humanitarian concerns with national security, but this case demonstrates a significant shortcoming. The timeline shows that al-Didi initially applied for a visitor visa in December 2017, which was refused. He reapplied with additional paperwork and was approved, even though an unspecific risk indicator was identified during his refugee claim process. Despite these red flags, al-Didi was granted permanent residency in 2021 and later citizenship. This isn't the first time that Canada's security screening processes have come under scrutiny. Similar incidents have occurred where individuals with questionable backgrounds have slipped through the cracks, raising concerns about the effectiveness of the current system. I had the opportunity to speak on CTV News this week and provided context to the issues surrounding Canada's security screening processes and the lack of resources put into the system to sufficiently account for both the sheer number of applicants trying to gain access to Canada and the national security concerns surrounding them. I'll leave a link to the interview in the show notes. While the article does not provide direct expert quotes, we can infer some critical points based on the information given. CSIS Interim Director Vanessa Lloyd mentioned that decisions were made based on available information at the time. However, it's clear that crucial data, such as the ISIS video, was not accessible to Canadian authorities when al-Didi was being screened. Ted Gallivan, the CBSA's Executive Vice President, acknowledged that this video was only obtained after al-Didi had already been granted citizenship, indicating a significant intelligence gap. The case of Ahmed al-Didi reminds us of the challenges and vulnerabilities within our current security screening processes. The fact that an individual with alleged ties to ISIS could not only enter Canada but also become a citizen before being arrested for plotting a terrorist attack is deeply concerning. As investigations continue, there will likely be calls for substantial changes to ensure that similar situations do not occur in the future. The global scourge of ISIS terrorist threat continues in our next story, where we travel to Vienna, Austria to discuss a crucial story that highlights the pivotal role of intelligence in preventing what could have been a devastating attack. Earlier this month, the CIA provided critical intelligence to Australian authorities, leading to the disruption of a terrorist plot aimed at a Taylor Swift concert. That's right. What was supposed to be a night of music and joy for thousands of fans nearly turned into a catastrophic event, if not for the timely intervention of the intelligence community. On August 8th, Taylor Swift was set to perform the first concert of 3 in Vienna, with a staggering 200,000 people expected to attend across the 3 shows. But behind the scenes, a more sinister plan was unfolding. The CIA, working closely with its international partners, identified 4 individuals connected to the ISIS plot who were planning to attack the concert. According to David S. Cohen, the deputy director of the CIA, the agency provided Austrian authorities with crucial information about these suspects, leading to multiple arrests just in time. Some of those arrested were found with bomb-making materials and even had access to a concert venue, a chilling reminder of how close this plot came to fruition. Cohen shared these details during the annual intelligence summit just outside Washington, D.C. He emphasized the gravity of the situation, stating that the attackers intended to kill tens of thousands of people, many of whom were likely American concertgoers. The arrest began on August 7th when Austrian authorities apprehended 2 suspects, including a 19-year-old Austrian who had pledged allegiance to ISIS and had specifically targeted Taylor Swift's Eras tour. Further arrests followed in the subsequent days, neutralizing the threat before it could be executed. While Cohen didn't disclose how the CIA initially uncovered the plot, it's not the first time that U.S. intelligence agencies have shared critical information to thwart terrorist activities abroad. Earlier this year, similar warnings were issued to Iran and Russia about the potential ISIS Khorasan attacks, though unfortunately, those events were not successfully prevented. This incident in Vienna underscores the importance of global intelligence collaboration and the life-saving impact of timely and accurate intelligence sharing. It's a stark reminder that the fight against terrorism is an ongoing and that vigilance remains crucial. It is also a reminder that although Canada does have the Canadian Security Intelligence Service, which is a domestic service, a foreign intelligence service, the CIA, were able to stop the plot happening in Austria. This gives us more food for thought when Canada looks at whether or not a foreign intelligence service is needed to ensure safety throughout the world. We now travel to Sweden for our next story, where we focus on a crucial issue concerning Russian sabotage. The article we'll be discussing is titled "Sweden Warns of Heightened Risk of Russian Sabotage," and it highlights the rising concern within Swedish authorities regarding Russian attempts to sabotage critical infrastructure, particularly weapons facilities. According to this article, Swedish security services have observed a significant uptick in sabotage attempts, cyber attacks, and aggressive espionage activities, with Russian actors being the primary suspects. Notably, defense company facilities have become targets for drone surveillance, which is believed to be a method of documenting and mapping these critical sites. The overall situation points to a broader strategy by Russia to destabilize and intimidate Western nations, particularly those like Sweden that have recently joined NATO and are supporting Ukraine in an ongoing conflict. From an intelligence perspective, this escalation is a clear indicator that Russia's willingness to take greater risk in operations against Western interests is increasing. The use of drones for reconnaissance combined with cyber attacks and disinformation campaigns shows a multifaceted approach aimed at weakening Sweden's defense capabilities and sowing distrust in the Swedish defense industry. This isn't an isolated incident, but a broader pattern of Russian aggression in Europe. We've seen similar activities in other countries, such as bold plot to assassinate a German arms manufacturer's CEO and a fire at a metal factory owned by a defense manufacturer in Berlin. These events highlight a concerted effort by Russia to disrupt Western defense industries through sabotage and intimidation. Historically, Russia has employed a range of covert tactics to exert influence and create instability in Europe. However, the current environment is marked by a notable increase in the frequency and boldness of these actions, likely driven by the ongoing conflict in Ukraine and the geopolitical tensions surrounding NATO's expansion. The Swedish Security Service, SAPO, has voiced serious concerns about the increased propensity for risk in Russian operations. According to Carl Milan, a spokesperson for SAPO, there's been a shift towards more aggressive actions, including potential sabotage aimed directly at Western and, by extension, Swedish targets. The Swedish Security and Defense Industry Association also notes a rise in intelligence operations, cyber attacks, and disinformation aimed at undermining trust in Swedish defense companies. This trend reflects a broader Russian strategy to exploit vulnerabilities in Western countries, particularly those that have shown strong support for Ukraine. By targeting critical infrastructure and spreading disinformation, Russia is attempting to weaken the resolve of NATO members and create divisions within their societies. Sweden is facing a heightened threat of Russian sabotage, with defense facilities being particularly vulnerable. This situation underscores the growing risk posed by Russian intelligence and covert operations across Europe. As these threats evolve, it's crucial for nations like Sweden to adapt their security measures and strengthen their defenses against such aggressive tactics. This is also a warning to the North American defense industry that any company manufacturing armaments being used by Ukraine is at risk of Russian sabotage attacks. Looking ahead, we can expect these tensions to persist, especially as NATO continues to support Ukraine. For our final story, we're delving into a crucial issue ahead of Canada's busy election season. With three provinces, British Columbia, Saskatchewan, and New Brunswick, preparing to head into the polls this fall, concerns are growing about their ability to fend off foreign interference. We'll be breaking down a recent CBC News article titled "Provinces' Capability to Respond to Foreign Interference Question Ahead of Busy Election Season," and discussing what it all means from a national security and intelligence perspective. As the article outlines, the threat of foreign interference isn't confined to federal elections. It's creeping into provincial contests as well. This is particularly troubling as the provinces often lack the resources and infrastructure needed to combat these sophisticated threats. While British Columbia, Saskatchewan, and New Brunswick all holding elections this fall, the ability of these provinces to protect the integrity of their electoral processes is being called into question. The article points to examples such as British Columbia, where the Chief Electoral Officer has been granted new powers to combat disinformation. These measures include the ability to take down false information quickly and levy fines of up to $50,000 per day for noncompliance. Meanwhile, Saskatchewan's Chief Electoral Officer, Michael Boda, has been pushing for similar powers but faces legislative limitations, leaving him reliant on transparency and public education to mitigate threats. From an intelligence perspective, the situation is a perfect storm. With rising polarization, the growth of deep fakes, and the rapid spread of disinformation, provincial elections are becoming prime targets for both foreign and domestic actors seeking to undermine Canadian democracy. The potential for these threats to disrupt the electoral process is real and growing, with foreign states like Russia likely to take advantage of any opportunity to sow discord particularly in politically sensitive areas like Quebec. This isn't the first time we've seen foreign actors attempt to meddle in democratic processes. This article draws comparisons to the Brexit referendum of 2016, where foreign interference played a significant role. However, as former clerk of Privy Council Michael Warnick points out, today's threats are even more insidious, with social media and cyber attacks adding new layers of complexity. The Canadian Security Intelligence Service has been warning about this for years, noting that foreign interference is not just a federal issue. Provinces are now on the front line, and their preparedness, or lack thereof, could have serious implications for the overall security and stability of the nation. Michael Warnick offers a sobering assessment in the article, stating that provincial electoral commissions are often small and ill-equipped to deal with these modern threats. His concerns are echoed by Elections Saskatchewan's Michael Boda, who has been vocal about the need for stronger legislative powers to combat disinformation. On the other side, British Columbia's Chief Electoral Officer Anton Bogman appears more optimistic thanks to new powers granted by the provincial government. These include the ability to quickly remove false information and impose significant penalties on offenders. However, the real test will come during the elections themselves, as these tools are put into practice. As we move into the fall election season, it's clear that the capacity of provinces to respond to foreign interference is under the microscope. While some regions, like British Columbia, are taking proactive steps to protect their electoral processes, others are lagging. This disparity could have serious consequences for the integrity of provincial elections and, by extension, for Canadian democracy as a whole. Thanks for tuning in for this week's episode. I'd like to wish my Canadian and American listeners a safe and happy long weekend. And I want to remind everyone that all the news articles and their links are available in the show notes. Hope to see you again here next week. And until then, stay curious, stay informed, and stay safe.
Thank you for tuning in to this week's episode of Global Intelligence Weekly Wrap-Up. A tremendous amount of effort goes into bringing you expert insights and analysis on the critical global intelligence issues that shape our world. If you found value in today's episode, we encourage you to show your support. Visit buymeacoffee.com/GIKN or buzzsprout.com/2336717/support to contribute. Your support directly fuels our ability to deliver the high-quality, in-depth discussions you rely on each week. Whether it's through a one-time donation or ongoing support, every bit helps us continue to bring you the expert perspectives that truly matter. Before you go, don't forget to hit that like button, leave a comment, and share this podcast with your network. Your engagement helps us grow and reach more listeners who value real-world intelligence insight. Make sure to subscribe to the podcast on Spotify, YouTube, Apple Podcasts, or simply ask your smart speaker to play Global Intelligence Weekly Wrap-Up so you never miss an episode. We appreciate your continued support, and we'll see you next week with more essential analysis and insight. As always, stay curious, stay informed, and stay safe.